and then I'm going to very
live,
quickly,
and we're live.
and we are live, and it's muted us there, and I'm just going
Yay.
to now have entropy.
Okay, but here's my question. Sorry, people who are coming for good content. I'm gonna ask for some.
Okay, wait. Let me introduce the screen first.
Okay, so it's live
now that
there.
we know we're live, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, but then I have a question.
Okay, questions afterwards. So let me just say, hi everyone. I'm Rachel, and I'm joined today by Andrea. There we go. I had to mute it in entropy. And today we are going to. Andrea's known as Andrea with the Bangs.
Oh yeah, you mean like what name? Yes.
On YouTube.
Yeah. That's what I go by on Twitter.
and
yeah.
Yeah, and we are just doing kind of a bit of an impromptu live stream because I need the practice, and we've decided that this would be a good idea. So, Andrea, you were telling me the other day you have just played through The Witcher with your hubby, and that awakened a bunch of thoughts in you, and you wanted to talk about women in video games. So, why don't you take the floor and kind of introduce the topic and like what you were thinking on that front, and how has playing The Witcher been for you?
Okay, so I have never really done video games before, and it was just sort of something. We started watching The Witcher with Henry Cavill, like the Netflix version, and we were like, we love this, and we were also like, we knew that we could do the books or the game, and we were like, I think we could maybe do the game a little easier, because, I don't know, that just seemed to make sense for us. And I was open to trying this sort of new open, what is it called? Open world game?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Open, like, where you make decisions and it can impact the outcome of the game. Like, I liked the idea of that. And I love fantasy, and I'm on the nerdy-ish end. Like, I really enjoy, like, hero movies of any kind, like fantasy of any kind, as long as they're good. Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of how we just decided. We watched the show, and we were thinking it would be fun to play together. And it replaced TV for a while, so...
And is this like your first kind of gaming experience? The first game you've played all the way through? The first game you played with Josh?
Yes. So when we were first married, I think he played Fallout, and I would watch that a bit, but he didn't play it a ton. And then we just kind of stopped. Like, and I would stop and watch a bit. It wasn't dedicated. It wasn't like I really was super invested in the story. Mm-hmm. So for this one, I was like, so here's how it went. So he played like literally with the controller.
Yeah. Because
I'm a newborn baby when it comes to controller action with my fingers. So he did that with the like if there were fights or anything like that, he would deal with that. I would sometimes, if we were traveling and it didn't need too much specific whatever, it didn't need too much finesse with the digits. I would just be like, okay, so like we're on route and we're traveling and we're still traveling, like that's how it was.
Sure.
And so that was, but then when like, oh no, there's some stuff coming to kill us, so you take it. I'm gonna try to not do that.
Wait, you made him do all the fighting?
Yes, yeah, because I was afraid, but I also just didn't care. I just wanted to get through the story because I wanted to know. I think next game we choose, I'm gonna try to look at it as, okay, I need to learn how to do this myself. But for this last one, I just passed it along. But we would both make the decision. We would decide together. Okay, so what should he say? Like, let's say the top one. Like, let's do the middle.
Yeah.
Or where should we go? Like, which land should we travel to? Which quest should we do that side quest? It would be a conference.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's how it looked.
That's so funny that it's the story elements of the game that like kept you going because for me it's the total opposite. Like I don't care about the story. I always get like I played through Morrowind and Skyrim with the manual and he would always be like, Rachel, like go talk to the guards to like get hints for like what's the next phase or whatever. And I was like, like why do I always have to talk to all these people? It's so boring. I'm just like, give me a dragon and I'm gonna fight the dragon and I'll be happy. So it's funny.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, yeah.
The opposite.
But I'm curious, like, okay, this is your kind of first gaming experience, and the first time you guys are playing a game as a couple. Did you guys ever fight? Did it bring up, I don't know, anything?
No, okay. It did, no. But we were up until like 1 a.m, like most nights, because this was over Christmas break.
Yeah.
So we actually were like, oh, like, we should like have intimate relations at some point. Like we felt bad, like we fell behind on our like love life.
Sure, yeah.
Because we were like, oh, we are playing the game. So I mean, we didn't fight, but we didn't do other things.
Yeah.
So like we were like so obsessed.
Yeah.
With the game. I mean, there were a couple times that I was like, oh, but like do we have to give that sword away? Like that was so and so's family sword. And I was sad.
Yeah, okay,
and
I saw your video on this where you're like,
do you remember?
You felt bad, like, upgrading your equipment and, like, selling old equipment because some person in the game gave it to you.
That meant something to, like, that Skelligan royal family, and it was their family. Like, I think it was called Fate or something. And I'm like, oh, we're going to sell Fate. And he would be like, okay, it's just, like, come on. Like, we've got to. But we were, I mean, I was a little, like, can we just, okay. I listened. I relented.
Yeah.
But he was a little bit more harsh about it. But I not harsh. But he was more, like, he had more, I guess, understanding that this is just pixels. But we were very, very excited about the whole thing, and like there's like, did you see our villa at the end, our winery or whatever?
Yeah.
Of my video. So we were very like, we built that house together. Like you had the option where you didn't have to renovate this house that you were given as part of payment.
Yeah. Or
you could like renovate the crap out of it. And we were both like, yes, let's make this ours. And here's part, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of reminded me of, like Dollhouse-ish. Like, it felt very female because it was renovating the house. And we could go get paintings. We bought paintings for it. It was, like we bought... we saved a lady who was our cook, and I was like, oh, there's the lady we saved. We gave her meaning. Her life has meaning because she loves to cook, and we gave her meaning. So I honestly felt so connected to this game. Like, I was so involved, and that was at the very end that we did this house thing. So I think that's why it sticks out in my mind. But yeah, so that's my experience with The Witcher.
So what about this, like, made you want, because we went out for coffee and you were like, okay, we need to talk about women in video games, and like you brought up high heels thing.
Oh,
and, like,
yeah, that was what I noticed.
What about The Witcher was like triggering some of these thoughts, and like what are your thoughts?
Okay, this. So I know there's a big thing in women in video games. Like, I knew that there was going in. I'm not going to judge the whole, that's the thing. I know that there's a lot to look at, but I have only experienced personally The Witcher. So I didn't want to make too many broad statements of judgment or not, but I was very annoyed with the heels on the boots of the women. I'm like, why do they have 3-inch heels? So impractical. What's wrong with a plain, like, 1-inch riding boot?
Sure.
That is more practical. And I mean, you could say, like, oh, why do they all have like double D's and a tiny waist? But for some reason, I zeroed in on the shoes.
Which is funny. And okay, when we talked about it, you were like, okay, give some thought. Why does that bother me so much?
Okay.
And I thought about it because I know that's definitely something I notice in movies too. And like, okay, as far as as far as video game characters go, like, you can give her an itty bitty waist and like triple D boobs. I don't care. You know, it's fantasy. It's not like the male proportions are all that realistic either. Like, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. But I was thinking about the high heels, and like even then, like it doesn't bother me. It's in a video game, but it's something I noticed in movies. And I think here's my theory. Okay, we're going really deep with this one, but my theory on why it bothers us is because when it comes to like comparing ourselves to a woman like in a video game with like ridiculous proportions, like we don't really take it seriously. We're not like, oh gosh, like if only, you know, if only whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas high heels is something that like we do kind of have a bit of a like day-to-day choice on high heels, and a lot of us opt out because, let's be honest, high heels suck. And I think that's maybe it bothers us more when we like see it in media, because it's like perpetuating this kind of idea that like, oh well, they're totally doable, and like women are just being wusses when they don't wear high heels every day. And it's like, gosh, like I would wear heels every day if they didn't murder my feet.
Right.
You know, and I do, like, I'll be honest, I do kind of get mad if like a man in my life is like, oh, just suck it up, you're being a baby, they're not that bad. Like, I just get mad. Like, I'm just like, I'd love to see you
okay,
like
I don't
stuck
know
in these
who's
for 8
saying
hours.
that. Yeah, you get a pair on. No, I think it's because the heels thing for me, because I almost was like, I don't even want to get into the proportions before I see other things. Mm-hmm. Like, I almost felt like I didn't even want to, well, we're kind of dipping our toes in the water right now. Mm-hmm. But for my little videos that I didn't really want to go in on, like, what do we think of these representations? Because I'm like, I need to see more. But for the shoes, I think it's because I can imagine wearing those boots. I'm not going to be like, oh, yeah, that particular corset and those, you know, like the long arm, voluminous, like, you know, medieval dress arms. Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I could put those, the boots weren't insane or crazy for me to imagine them myself on. You know, I'm not gonna, wear like Siri's, like, puffy shirt with her corset things, you know, whatever. I'm not cosplaying that up, you know. But the shoes, I think I could imagine wearing, and so they're easier to imagine. So that might be why I honed in on those. But it's interesting. I'm going to bring this up though. I was talking with someone about representation, not about women, but about liberal versus conservatives in the academy. And so his name's Jeffrey Sachs, and that interview will be coming out in a couple weeks.
Okay.
But so he's been studying this. And so it's funny because we were talking about representation and lack thereof of conservatives. So it's like, well, why does that matter? And it's kind of the same across the board, representation of anybody. But this time it happens to be the very people who are typically like, who cares? But usually conservatives are the one who, from what I've encountered, usually people who are on the more conservative side are like, it's just, who cares? It's not a big deal. Let's leave it be. What does it matter? That's for anyways on Twitter, because Twitter's real life. No, I'm sure Twitter is totally real, representation wise, for the kind of conservatives who are going on about why it doesn't matter. But this is a situation where, like, I asked for an example, and he said there was a rally. So this one particular university that I can't remember the name of it was going to have Milo Yiannopoulos on, like, there. And it was actually just, they weren't even really wanting him. They actually, the conservative group, like the Young Republicans or whatever, they just were like, we want to make a big splash to just stick it to the liberal man, you know? And so that reasoning, I think, is kind of like, okay, well, is that good reasoning to have someone on your, like speak just to stick it to someone? But that's what I thought. So this other professor, I guess a conservative professor that was like a mentor of theirs, actually talked with them and kind of talked them out of it. And so then he wasn't there. And it wasn't because he couldn't come because of free speech. It was because, well, what's your reason for having him? Is it because you legitimately are like, we want to hear him speak? But it wasn't. It was like, they were like, we just want to have whoever we want, and we want him. Like, they were just being They wanted to make a big thing. And so, but they wouldn't have listened to a liberal professor. They listened to one of their own. So that was an example as to why it matters having more conservatives represented in the academy. I guess right now, depending on where it is, it's quite varied. It's from 5-1 to 10-1 to 12-1. So I just thought that was interesting that I heard about representation mattering in one instance, and then we're literally talking about representation of women in video games in another instance. So I just thought it was kind of an interesting idea. So I don't know. What do you think of that? Does it carry across, or is it not really? Does it not relate?
Well, I think first off, like, if we are going to cover this ground, like, if we even want to go into, like, representation of women in video games and this kind of stuff, like, I think we need to just have a brief conversation about Gamergate, because
right,
a lot of this stuff, like, has been covered before, and I think it's important to recognize, like, if we want to talk about this, like, we're not talking about it objectively right now, you and I, as much as we would like to. Because in a lot of
I'm
ways,
really out of the bubble though, right? Like,
sure.
I'm very like, I'm just new. So for me, it is like, we're just talking about it, but I understand where you're coming from.
Well,
yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, you watched all of Anita Sarkeesian's Feminist Frequency videos, right? I heard you say that in one of your videos, right? So
I did,
it's like
yes, I did. Before I knew anything.
In a lot of ways, actually, like, you are more affected more influenced by what went down in Gamergate when it comes to a dialogue about women in video games than I am in a lot of ways. Because,
I guess that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Because this is something that, like, there was a big vocal group and a lot of this was covered. And, like, I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty of, like, what happened in Gamergate, because you already did a video with James, and he did a really good job of kind of covering what happened and, you know, what were the events that kind of triggered this, and that really at its core, you know, it was the gaming community versus the corrupt media, and how that played out and their kind of reaction. So I don't want to, like, repeat what's already been said well, and if anybody's watching this and they're curious, like, they can watch your video. It was great. But what I do kind of want to cover on the topic, and I don't think James really covered this, is how much what happened in Gamergate and the media tactics are still occurring today, and kind of set the stage for this feminist discussion around video games. And if I accomplish only one thing in this stream, I hope to make you think differently of Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian. Because, like, I heard your comments on it, and you were like, oh, like, you know, poor Zoe Quinn, like, I feel bad, she was so slut-shamed and all this stuff, and, like, yeah, I sort of get it, but I just need to jump into examples, because that's the best way to cover this.
So I am really on the fence here.
Yeah.
Because I was also trying to be a bit devil's advocate-ish.
Sure, of course.
With Grimm, and sorry, his nickname's Grimm. So that's why he said he likes to be called that. So
okay, that's fine.
His real name is James, but yeah, you go. So I just wanted to try to be like, okay, what would someone be saying if they're watching this? Like, Andrea, why aren't you asking this? You know, because I do that. So I was just trying to get a little bit of, okay, well, on the other hand, what about this? So there was a little bit of that. And like with Anita, there are things that I think she covered that were unfair, because there's parts of games that that's like a random act of violence against a woman, and it's not the main quest, it's not the main thing you can do. I heard about this from Boogie, what's his name, when he was talking to the H3 podcast guys, and he spoke with her, and he's like, you know, Anita, I know that this one part in this video game that you critiqued, you have to look for that. It's a random little kind of weird Easter egg that was, I guess the question would be more properly asked, well, why have that and random bit in code at all? But she didn't ask it that way. She made it look like that was the main part of the quest or something. Sure. So I understand that she misrepresented some of the things that she showed, some of the clips, she looked for the worst clips that may not be mainstream in the game. So I do understand that.
But I think the core thing that I want to get across is it's a mistake to treat Zoe Quinn or Anita Sarkeesian as genuine actors in a lot of ways. And this tactic isn't the first time it was used, but during Gamergate, like a lot of these terms that we are familiar with now, like, you know, when they call people, things are sexist and you're misogynist and, you know, these kind of things. Like now we're used to it. We see it all the time. You bring up immigration, racist, right? But back then in Gamergate, this was kind of the first time that this was really uncovered, and this was kind of shocking for people. And like you had game developers that were like, oh, my game was accused of being sexistic, and like they weren't even using the terms right, you know, and we look at that today and we're like laughing at them like, I feel like he doesn't know, because we're so familiar with it now. But this tactic isn't just it has a massive impact on the gaming industry, and in a way that skews the economics of it a little bit. So excuse me for a second, I'm going to go into the economics, but you know, in a free market, one thing you do see fairly consistently is when there is a market for something, when there is a consumer need or want, you generally see companies that pop up to provide that. But what these gaming journalists did is that they whined and they complained and they pushed an agenda pretending that they represented gamers and the market, when the reality is they're not the market. You know, Anita Sarkeesian is actually on the record admitting that she doesn't really play games and she doesn't really know very much about it, but she kind of dove into it a little bit because she wanted to do her like feminist series on it. But the thing is, they present themselves as experts in these topics, and they whine and they complain and they attack games like gaming publishers or developers or gamers themselves, as you saw in Gamergate, in a way that skews the market understanding of what people actually want. And like a lot of times, because somebody might argue like, oh, well, you know, they just want proper representation for women in games. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, that's their right to want that. Right. The thing is, they're not the market. And yet they use this, actually, they use it against companies to control what they want. And there's a lot of other incentives going on in here too. They are collaborations between certain activists like Anita Sarkeesian and other games companies who want to narrow the market. So this is something that's been used against Japanese game developers. And in all fairness, you know, there are some Japanese games out there that, you know, if you want to approach it from like a how women are portrayed lens, maybe it's not so great and maybe they deserve the fuss. But the thing is, like, a Japanese game developer doesn't know the like political climate and kind of social justice culture that exists in the West. And so they just look at this backlash that they receive. Oh, these games are so sexist and they're so terrible. And they think, oh, like this won't be well received. But when you actually look at like Steam user reviews, or like when people have actually played the games, these are really highly rated games. People really enjoy them. They get really high user scores. They just get bad critic scores. It's actually a lot like the movie industry where, like, for me, actually, it's the reverse. I'm like, if the critics hate it, but it has a high user score, it's probably a great movie. But if it has a high critic score...
What was the latest? Like, I know the Chappelle special was like that. There was another movie that happened to recently. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know specifically the example that you're bringing up, but let's like keep the conversation focused on games.
Okay.
But
well,
like
anyways,
Mirror's Edge is actually a great example of where this happened, right? So for Mirror's Edge 1, they released the game. It had really high scores, but it was really critiqued by the social justice crowd. And in Mirror's Edge 2, they actually brought on Anita Sarkeesian as a consultant so that they could be, you know, properly portraying women in their games. And it had a vastly inferior user score. It had like a 5.2 out of 10 for the users. But then like Polygon, which is one of these games journalist sites, rated it like 8 out of 10. Right? Because it fit their agenda. And I think what I'm pointing out with Anita Sarkeesian is she does this, where she will kind of whip up a media storm at some of these game companies and like pointing specific things out, like this is a horrible portrayal of women and these tropes and all this stuff, and there's a storm, but the goal is to get either hired on as a consultant or, you know, paid off in some form or another. Like, she's not clean in this, and she's not a genuine activist in a lot of ways. And this is what a lot of people noticed about Gamergate, was that people's hands were dirty. Like, they weren't just, you know, they weren't just genuine ideologues. They were playing this game for their own power and their own, like, political, financial, career success.
Okay, so here's the thing. Oh, one, I also can't see you anymore.
Oh, here, I'll pull
I don't know if you know. That's okay. So, oh, here we go. I'm like, oh, I can't see you. So, here's the thing. So, I to be totally honest, I am riding the centrist road for this one.
Sure.
Like, when I was talking to Graham, I'm like, okay, but I got a really good timeline, mind you. Like, anyone can watch the interview I did with Graham, and even if you disagree with the interpretation of the events, it's an excellent timeline. And I don't disagree with his interpretation either. No. I am just like on this position. Sorry, what? Were you gonna say something?
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say I don't disagree with anything he said. Like, I think he gives a great timeline and just.
I figured you. Oh, and I figured you probably did. I think he was kind of on the side that you guys.
No, I wouldn't say
I figured
so.
You would agree with.
I think, well, he was, like, in the sense that he was a gamer, right? He was a gamer and he was kind of on that side. But one thing that he doesn't go into is, like, the cultural repercussions of Gamergate. And, you know, he mentions this briefly when he says, like, okay, well, you know, he thinks it kind of hurt the movement to be associated with the right. He says the media associated us with the right. Gamergate became a right movement, and, like, they've even blamed Gamergate for, like, putting Trump in power, right? And so, right, and he says this in your interview, and
I don't remember the Trump part.
Oh yeah, they like tried to blame Trump on Gamergate, and it became really associated as a right-wing movement. And like he explains this, and he says, "Oh well, that's because you had Milo Yiannopoulos and Breitbart jumping on kind of." And he describes it as they're jumping on the bandwagon and they're like using this for their own growth and fame. But and you know, he can think that that's fine. But I think it misses, you know, Gamergate started as a consumer uprising or a consumer movement against corrupt media, but it flourished into a full-on culture war against feminism and social justice, like, agenda that was being pushed in the gaming industry. And I think this is where his explanation is a little bit weak. Because he doesn't cover some of these, he doesn't cover some of the, like, incentives that were going on and some of the forces at play and some of the power plays that were uncovered through Gamergate, and how some of these advocates for, you know, the social justice narrative were using it to kind of gatekeep. And, like, there's, like, I don't know, like, it's a really deep topic, and we might have to do, like, another stream on this, but I just didn't want to get into, like, women and video games and how we're represented in video games without acknowledging that the social justice narrative on this really shapes people's perceptions of how everybody feels about the situation, or how, like, weird and messed up these games are. Like, I tried to watch some of Anita Sarkeesian's Feminist Frequency videos. Yeah. I got through 2, and then I just got so mad I couldn't watch them anymore. So we might have to, like, talk about those again.
I think I need to watch them again. Yeah. No, I think, because I honestly was, when I think she was on the cover of Wired, I know, years ago, and I was like, oh, who's this? Yeah. And I was so not, like, I was so unaware. I mean, I wasn't really, like, into feminism particularly, and I wasn't like I wasn't into any gaming. I just was like, oh, this is interesting. And I watched them and I wasn't even like sitting there agreeing necessarily. I thought that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I kind of just like the whole time I remember being like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So there and like now there are some memories I have of things that she describes that I have an answer for. I'm like, oh, that's why that's not as bad as it sounded. Like there's a part where she talks about this one particular video game where the female protagonist who's in need of help turns into this monster that you have to kill at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that sucks, for the girl gets killed. I didn't
Sure.
know what to think of it, but then I know that in like a kind of Jungian archetype structure, that's the representative of the devouring mother, the literal devouring mother monster that eats her young. Like
Sure.
that I kind of saw some archetypal similarities with extreme femininity in
Yeah.
that video game. I don't know if the video game creators were like, let's put some archetypes in here.
I don't know.
But I was like, I
Probably
kind of
not.
reasoned it out in a way that
Sure.
I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. So I didn't even rewatch it. I just remembered that when I learned
Sure.
about the different types of the soft feminine, that's like the good, the kind that nurtures the young until it's like, no, you get pushed out of the nest now. You've got to go on your own. Like that's the positive side. And then the negative side is sort of the Oedipal keeping in, like, no, you don't leave. You stay, you stay home with me,
Sure.
But whatever. So that was just me kind of being like, ooh, symbolic. But I think I do need to watch them again because I didn't really think, oh, this is what it is. I just the whole time I remember being like, oh, this is interesting stuff. Cool. Like, and I even remember watching one critique about the woman, about the female in video game. Like, she doesn't have to always save herself. Like someone did a little critique where she's like, I'm a feminist, but I don't agree with like the way that Anita does. I remember watching those. Those were available at the time. So I did kind of think like, oh, this is definitely like not taken like, oh, we like, yes, we agree with her. Like, I knew it was controversial, but it was so outside of me that I was like, oh, it's very interesting stuff. But so I need to watch it again with all my knowledge of the social justice aspect along with the feminist aspect. I understand feminism a lot better now. And so there's that. And then with regards to Gamergate, I actually kind of want to hold off judgment till like I have what I spoke about with Grimm, but I do want to speak about Gamergate with someone on the other side who was pro Zoe Quinn.
Sure.
Like,
And
I
you won't
want
get that from me.
I know.
Sure.
No, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I know. That's why I haven't asked
but
you to interview
but I
you
do
about it.
think though that like if we're gonna go into this and talk about like women in video games and this sort of stuff, like we do need to understand who's setting the narrative on this and who's even bringing up these questions, right? Like you watch Anita Sarkeesian's videos and you're like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way. But that's the thing. That's the impact it's having. Is like they're going out and they're complaining about these things and they're shaping what you think about and what you think you should even be considering in like some of these video games. And and I think a big piece of it too is like there's a lot of like feigned victimization for the sake of building their platforms. And this is something that like sorry, you told me Grimm, that's the nickname he likes, right?
Yeah.
Grimm doesn't really cover this. Like, he covers the corruption, and he covers that, like, oh, well, instead of addressing the corruption, they responded with, well, no, you guys are horribly sexist, and you're not pointing out valid things. Like, they invalidated everything that the gamers were complaining about, saying, like, hey, this is not ethical media practice. And, the response was, oh no, everything you're pointing out is invalid because you're horrible sexists that are attacking this poor female developer because you just can't handle, women in games. And the thing is, this was a narrative that was built. And it's not just Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn that, like, jumped on this bandwagon. I don't know if you've heard of Brianna Wu. But she also did. Okay, well, we won't even get into Brianna Wu, but but the gist of it is a lot of horrible threats were made, and And these women were like, they were on interviews, now they were all over the media as like these poor women that were brutally attacked by the savage trolls of the internet.
But they did though.
Yes,
like
okay,
they were
look,
attacked.
people
Like
can say
I don't
nasty-
want to say
yes,
that they
no,
were
they
in the
were.
right.
They were,
Yes.
and people can say nasty
Okay.
things on the internet, but there's a big difference between something that's actually a death threat and something that was just somebody's mean comments. And and I think Grimm actually brings this up. He says, like, I think it was Zoe Quinn that put out like a list of like 100 hateful things that hateful messages that were sent towards her. And he says he meticulously went through it. And he says a lot of them were just genuine criticism. But
Okay,
I think,
well, and then that's another question. But I do have one other question though. Can I ask it? Because I know
Yeah.
you were going somewhere.
yeah, that's all right.
But I want to ask about the ethics. The ethics of the market. You're like, well, the market didn't want that. But that's going off the premise that, and again, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here. I'm not.
Sure.
I'm very centrist on it. I really don't have strong feelings, but I do question: do we then do what the market demands? Is the market king? Well, look at the representation of people of color in Disney back in the day.
Yeah. But
That was fine for them back then, but like just because the market was like, yeah, we're fine with this, doesn't mean that was okay. Like that's what I'm thinking of.
okay, when you say the market, it's really important to
Yeah.
get across like what you specifically mean. So let me illustrate with an example, okay? With entropy, okay, as software developers, we've put out a product. And it's kind of like weddings. Okay, they say as soon as you get engaged, everybody and their dog has an opinion about your wedding. And it's exactly like that when you start a company as well. And you put a product out there, and now like everybody we meet has some sort of opinion about what direction we should go and what we should add to the product and how we can improve it and all this stuff. And some people are very eloquent with how they give their advice and very nicely worded, and they will get offended if we do not take their advice. But what we have to constantly ask ourselves as software developers is this somebody who will use entropy? Is this our target market? Is this a streamer? Is this somebody who watches streams? Are they using entropy, or are they just opinionated? Because if they don't actually use entropy, it doesn't help us very much to follow their advice and bend over backwards and program in all this stuff that a streamer is going to go, what the crap is this? I don't use this features. And so that's what I mean when I say the market. I mean, you're creating something for somebody. Who is that somebody? And what the feminists have done is they pretend to be that somebody. And this is what the problem was in Gamergate, was that you had this whole media conglomerate that was supposed to be representing gamers. They're supposed to be representing the people that buy games and play games and genuinely enjoy games. But they themselves didn't. They weren't the customer. They weren't the ones playing the games, but they pretended to be an advocate on the behalf of what this community wanted. And it was inaccurate. And so then you had developers who are trying to cater to a community. And this is what you see in Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge is a perfect example. Mirror's Edge #1, great user ratings. They didn't appeal to any of the feminist narrative. Mirror's Edge #2, they hire Anita Sarkeesian on as a feminist consultant, and the game just plummeted. People didn't enjoy it as much, right? People, they criticized. So both Mirror's Edge had a female protagonist. And I'll admit, I haven't played the games. I don't know much about them. I just know they both had a female protagonist. The first one, a lot of people really enjoyed it. The second one, they complained that the female protagonist was whiny and annoying, kind of like what people complain about feminists. And no surprise, Anita Sarkeesian was an advisor on the team for Mirror's Edge 2, and it did not perform nearly as well. You had like a 95%, I think it was 95%, sorry, I have the numbers somewhere, I don't want to get this wrong, but anyway, very high user rating for the first one, 5.2 out of 10 for the second one in user ratings. This is what I'm talking about when I say market.
Okay, so I do get that. My question is though, what if the market, we'll just do a hypothetical, what if the market does change and a lot of women start playing video games and a lot of, we'll just say, even though I know the stats aren't super high on that, but say that they do, and they're like, okay, all the things that like the people who weren't the market, and I wouldn't be necessarily the one in on this group, but I'm just saying for hypothetical.
Yeah.
Say that they come in and they're like, yeah, actually, so the representation, we would like to see more, like, just can you make her like a C cup instead of a triple D? Like, you know, can we take away the heels to make it 1 inch instead of 3? Whatever. Like, hey, whatever. I'm not even asking for much, but like if they are asking for a little bit of shifts, and you have the numbers for like, okay, this is a significant part of the market, very similar to like we know movies. Men and women go to see movies. That's not video games is huge difference.
Even in video games, video games is like 3 times the size of Hollywood and movies. It's huge, and the reality is you do have women that are playing video games, and the communities are changing to reflect that. But the thing is, what we don't need, well, okay, forget what we need or don't need. Let's just go with like
those
what
women?
you see.
Why aren't they consulting?
They're playing
why aren't those women
phone
consulting?
games. Like if you want to look at where most women are in gaming, they're playing Candy Crush on their phones. And you actually see this reflected in the kinds of phone apps and like games that show up for phones. They're all like cute little cats, and they're like totally stuff that women are into, because I think I remember seeing the statistics on this. I think it's like 70 to 80% of mobile game players are female. Right? And so it really depends. You got to know the market. And the reality is the market is catering to women on their phones. They are. You know, you get the cute little cat games. And like, I used to have one on my phone. It was called Cookie Cats. And it like, you actually literally had colorful, cute, fat little cats that would like sing a jolly little song while you solved puzzles or whatever. And like, it's stuff that like maybe guys aren't into, but the market caters for where the customers are. And the thing is, they don't need advocates and like activists.
But my hypothetical, there's a bunch of women who have moved in and who are like, okay, can we see ourselves represented a bit more in the video games? Are you like, if it reflects it and it reflects, like, would you then be like, okay, now we have something to deal with? And I'm not saying you should listen or not. It's just, sorry, cater to them or not. Just listening and considering. That's what I'm wondering. Like, because you know, I'm just trying to like think of what would be an objection to.
But I think
because these are the numbers, we want to make sure people listen.
There's a big
if it reflected it.
Yes, but I think it is reflected in the numbers. Right, this is the thing. Markets are driven by the numbers. What you see and what you saw in Gamergate was user reviews of games being on the complete opposite spectrum from what the critics were saying. And you see this in movies too. And this is where there's that collide where it's like, you know, the Anita Sarkeesians don't represent the market. And this is something you see too. I mean, maybe I shouldn't bring this up, but this is definitely something you see in politics all the time. Okay, I don't know if you know the exact statistics. I knew them once, like, I don't want to get this wrong, because we're live, but, okay, the stats on, like, transgender community in the United States, for instance.
Oh, it's something like 0.07.
It is a fraction of a percent. It's tiny. And yet, we're all exposed to it. It's being added to curriculums. We're seeing, you know, all sorts of things. Because there's a big, big difference between squeaky wheel and actual market representation. And this is the thing. And we've even encountered people like this in the company. Like, as a company, we've had friends that are very opinionated about how we should do things and would like to speak with authority on, you know, what our customers really want. We'd rather hear difficult from our customers.
I understand, but it's hard. Okay, so people always take those things to the extreme. Like, what if the, you know, customers, and again, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go to the farthest example. They're like, oh, well, we want like our Nazi swastika stuff, being like manufactured. Like, why don't, like, there's a demand, like I know that's, again, I'm making up things that aren't real. Like say that there's a giant like group of people, like the numbers have swelled, and they're like, we want We want our stuff. Like, where's our signs? Where's our paraphernalia? Where's our little armbands?
Yeah, that's
like, why
where
aren't you? And it's like the market wants it,
Yeah,
so
but
that's the morality part.
Just because there's a group of people wanting something on the internet and like voicing it, doesn't mean it equates to the market wanting it. And this is where I'll say follow the money.
Well, you didn't answer my question.
No, this is the answer.
But
follow the money, right? Are they
okay,
buying
so the
game?
Nazis have the money, like the alt-right.
No. Well, sure. You know, if these guys, let's say there's a whole group that say, okay, we want swastikas everywhere, and then they don't get it. The question really becomes, did they buy the game anyway or not? And let's say you're a game developer and you're like, oh, like, I think that maybe a huge portion of my customers want this in the game. I might suffer by not putting it in.
Okay, I'm starting to get it now.
Right? And you're not sure whether you should.
Policing other people's playing things. Okay.
Yeah, right? You're not sure whether you should put it in. And so as a developer, you're looking at it going, okay, how much is this going to hurt me or not, whether I put it in or not? And then let's say they decide, don't put it in. Then the question becomes, how much did their sales drop compared to the last game by doing or not doing?
It's hard because people are, okay, and again, this is why I'm like, I'm not in the world. I've interviewed Grimm, and I want to hear the other side just for my own sake of fair balance wise, as an interviewer. But it kind of, you can say the same about porn, right? Let's ban it. Let's get rid of it. I'm not saying that video games are the same as porn, by the way. I'm just using it as an example of something that people have wanted to ban in the past. And actually, I remember, I think that the whole country of India, like, banned it. And for, like, one day. And it didn't go well. Anyway, it's sort of like a freedom of movement or freedom to consume what you like. It kind of infringes on certain freedom rights and whatnot. So it goes from, there is a sort of, you can insert ethics in, or you can look at just what is like the market demands, and be like, they're free, or you can make your own product that is what you want, and you're like, we'll see if it does well, which I think is probably the best if you're like, let's have our own. Yeah. If these people are serious.
Sure. I think that maybe sometimes people get hung up on the word market, and I think this is a big fault of academia, partially because we get taught in school. So this is okay. I took development studies in university. Like, I get it, okay? And we were taught that, like, there was some horrible, systematic, oppressive force that was deciding all of these market injustices. And, I kind of was like, okay, like, all right, let's see what's going on. When I was straight out of Africa, I've seen a lot of poverty and a lot of corruption, and I wanted solutions, And so I looked at this and I thought, okay, well, where are the solutions? If I'm going to find solutions, and at first I thought, okay, great, like, corruption's the problem. I need to dismantle corruption. So let's go into the nitty gritty of how this system works so that I can take it down and build it back up and, like, yay me, I'm going to save the world, okay? Stupid, naive Rachel, first year university. And and so I started to get into economics, and I started just to take some of the basic classes and try to understand and break it down. How does this work? Because if the incentives are, if the structure is unjust, we need to know how to reform it. So I started to dive into how things work. And one thing I learned is that, wow, things actually make sense the way they work. Things actually operate in a way that is just individuals trying to make the best decisions for their own lives. There's not some rich, fat, white man sitting at the top of everything deciding, what prices oil should be this year. Not that I should get into oil prices and all the things that impact that. That was bad example, my bad. But what I'm trying to get across here is that, like, it is a system at its core that is essentially just the product of mass human behavior and a bunch of individuals just trying to, live their lives. And this is the thing that was so striking about Gamergate, was that you had a ton of gamers who were, originally fairly apolitical, just doing their own thing, just enjoying their hobby. And they just got lambasted and personally attacked, as sexist and these horrible people, because some group of activists had issues with certain pieces of the games. Actually, that's not even it. That's not even the core of it, right? It was really a mask. It was used to attack instead of take ownership for the corruption.
Well, okay, but like one comment I do have to make about your sort of mini sort of lesson in markets is that people do get left at the bottom, though, and it's not of their fault. People who with disabilities who literally don't have the faculties to, you know, like even Jordan Peterson has talked about like the poor will always be among us.
Yeah, of course.
Quoting Jesus.
Yeah, of course.
Like yes, society, we do like, you know, hierarchically set ourselves out. But the people on the bottom aren't like lazy, like doing ne'er-do-wells. Some of them, it's not their fault. Yes. So that's why it's like we can't have a pure capitalist, like whatever the market says, because it'll leave some people out.
Okay, that is not at all the direction I wanted to take this stream.
I know, I'm sorry.
We're talking about women in video games? You know, we could...
I just had to say something because I just couldn't, like, leave it.
I know. And I'm not getting there. Like, I'm not trying to justify the entire whatever. Okay, you know, we can do that.
I brought it away. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We can have that conversation. You know, and the reality is acknowledging... I don't know if I like it ever, but okay. Like, the reality is acknowledging that markets are made up of individuals making their own individual decisions doesn't need to be, like, justification for the fact that people fall through the cracks. Like, those two things don't need to be equated. And I think there's... Yeah, and I didn't want to take it there. We can go there later.
I did. But I shouldn't have, because I actually have to get going, and like we're already over.
Yeah, exactly. So, you got to go for dinner.
Hey, can I? Yeah, I do have like I'm supposed to do a date night with my husband.
Sure.
So like, can we look at like Entropy to see if there's any like comments at all?
You know what?
Like, we're live.
We are live. And we can definitely look. I never gave anybody my Entropy link. I didn't even talk about it during the stream. So,
well, I guess I don't know. Maybe there's no YouTube. Anything,
you know, there might not even be. Okay, look at So, we do have some comments that we should probably look at. Great, Deus Volt, thank you. Deus Volt Tech Angel, great, thank you for your thanks. Why not let the producer suffer the loss? If they make something no one wants, then let the market punish them. Okay, this is great. This is a great comment.
Okay.
He's exactly right?
Okay.
This idea that when you make something nobody wants, you get punished for it. And it's not because there's some one person that's like, we're going to punish them. It's that nobody wants your product. Like, you made a crappy product, right?
Results, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is the thing, like, so... Okay, let's talk about Zoe Quinn for 2 seconds, okay? She made a game...
Okay, but then I have to go!
I know. But he brought this up, and I just have to address this. Okay, Zoe Quinn made a game, okay? It's called Depression Quest, okay?
Yeah.
As far as games go, it's not a great game. It's just a text adventure. You know, have you ever read those books where it's like choose your own adventure book kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like, it's not hard to program. She essentially just created one of those, but digitally. Like, it doesn't take a lot of development experience or coding. It is not a sophisticated graphics endeavor at all. Okay? And her game got some funding. And I'm sorry, I always forget his nickname, but James,
Grimm, yeah.
Grimm, thank you. Grimm, he talked about how, you know, he had struggled with depression for many years. He loved this idea and he helped fund its existence. Okay? This is how these things work. You put something out there, and if people are into it and people want it, they fund it and they make it happen, right? Entropy exists today because there was a market need, right? The censorship of streamers on the internet created an opening for us, and we said, wow. People don't have the tools to interact with their audience. They're being censored left, right, and center. Why don't we create a, platform where streamers can interact with their audience in a censorship-free environment where they can, whatever, right? All that to say, I know it's my little Entropy plug, but I don't really mean to do this, but what I mean is we saw a market opening because of the mistakes that were being made. YouTube made a lot of mistakes they didn't forget that YouTube content creators were never the customers, YouTube content creators were never the customers, right? And they're not treating them like that. When you mistreat a group of people, they want something different, right? And so this is where he's saying, okay, somebody can. Why not let them make a bad game or a game that nobody wants, and then you suffer for it because then you don't make ends meet, right? Nobody pays for your game. Right. That is exactly the heart of what I was getting at. It's this reality that we think of this market force as this like brutal hand that punishes or rewards. But what, the issue with people like Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn is that they skew the market because they have media power behind them. And the media is not representative of the community. And they say
I get
something,
that,
with far more authority and oomph than they actually have as far as a consumer power goes. And so you could still make a game and have Anita throw a fit and still get great reviews and great sales. And the vice versa is true too. You can make.
I'm just thinking, like, man, we just didn't even go to the how women should look in the games.
I know. But these are
like, there's just a lot.
Yeah. There's, there's just so much to cover, and it's I just want to there's a few more comments in the chat.
We can look at them quick, and then I really have to go.
Okay, all right. I guess I'll just read them. As far as gaming goes, I'm not good at reading chats fast when I'm feeling like I need to hurry. But
no, sorry, no, don't be rushed. Okay, well, I don't know what they're saying, but I played. I didn't play this one with my husband, but he was nearing the end of it. We played. I watched a little bit of him play this one for the past week. Yeah. He's been finishing it, and it's called Horizon Zero Dawn. And it has a female protagonist, and she's 19, and she's awesome. She actually she's in tribal covered up clothes the whole time because it's cold. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, you're in the chats. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was that's great, and she was super competent. She was the chosen one. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. So I'm that's a good game that represents women very, very well. No complaints here. And was good. Very good. Mm-hmm. They're apparently making another one. So, or they're rumored to make another one.
Sure. And that's exactly it. I think the other guy in the chat, he said, he says that he thinks, a lot of the concern around this was that they were kind of depriving, pushing out games that were still... There was still a healthy demand and supply of these games, because they're kind of pushing in their own, their own agenda, their own narrative, and really bashing games that were successful. And the thing is, too, this is why I say it's a mistake to think Anita Sarkeesian is a genuine actor, because she will purposefully go after successful games that made a lot of money so that they will hire her on as a consultant.
I see,
okay. And, there are tweets. I actually have one saved on my phone, but I will not. I'll not bore you with those details. But I have tweets where she's tweeting at these companies, being we better help you out. I offer my services as a consultant before the market tears you apart for being sexist. Kind of these sort of threatening, kind of I offer my services. You wouldn't want to get murdered, would you? Sort of, of approach to things. And this is too. Oh, I'm so mad I didn't bring this up. But Candace Owens, okay? Yeah. You know her. You like her. You know how she got her start.
No, I don't like her. No,
you don't like her?
Rachel.
Okay, great.
I do not. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
Oh yeah. Well, not anymore. Sure. But a lot of people liked her when she first.
Oh, sorry. Please. Let me.
Okay.
Not since her cat fight with Blair White on Ruben. I stopped liking her the moment I saw that.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, Candace Owens is not exactly the most genuine actor herself, but nevertheless, I will save that for later. But Candace Owens and Zoe Quinn meet. If you haven't heard that story yet, it is very interesting.
Matt? Oh.
Yep.
That would be a very interesting thing to look at. I don't know how that went.
You know what, Andrea? I think we just need to do a part 2. We need to do a part 2 where we can actually cover, more of this fascinating stuff.
I don't know, because I'm so, I will give you my devil's advocate questions, but I'm not, I think you're right, or I think you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm so, like I said, I'm really centrist on this because I don't have enough information to form an opinion yet. I'm
Yeah.
just new into gaming, and yeah, I watched all of Anita's stuff, but it was a long time ago, and I don't really
Yeah.
remember a lot of it. And I feel, I don't know. I just feel weird because I can't really be like yeah or no, you know?
Sure. That's fine. That's fine. And you know what? Like Anita's videos, I mean, this is how Sargon got his start, right? So many YouTubers got their start in and around, Gamergate or immediately afterwards. And a lot of it was responding to Anita Sarkeesian's videos. So it's out there.
We can
Like,
talk about it again. I just like I
Yeah.
feel bad that I'm not like giving more oomph because I like yes or no. Like I just am like I don't know. I don't know yet. As long as you're okay with that, with me not having much of an opinion other than maybe
sure. That's just
wondering
fine.
this or that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's just fine. I'd love to talk more too, just about like, especially if you start to play more games with Josh. I'd love to talk about that
I do.
because you know, like
Yeah.
playing games with Emmanuel was like a big part of our relationship, and like it brought up a lot. And I have to say, like I never played games before we started
Yeah.
dating, and it was something that he really enjoyed, and it was something that I was totally grumpy about learning at first. And like anyway, there's a lot of interesting stories in there too, and I'd love to like talk more about you and
Let's
Josh
go
and
over
your
that,
experience
too.
and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We have to decide on a game soon, so I'll let you know when we play through that a bit more.
Sure.
So yeah. Okay,
Awesome.
thanks for inviting me on, Rachel. This was great.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry for taking you over time, and
Oh no,
yeah,
that's okay.
we'll be back with round 2, I guess.
Okay.
All right.
Till then.
All right. Till then. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I guess we'll catch you next time. Thanks, everybody in the chat. I love your comments, and we will see you next time we do this. All right.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
I'm just looking at the comments. Did you stop streaming?
I did now.
Okay.